Mongolia. It's a land of freezing winters, hot summers, endless steppe and abrupt mountain ranges. It has wide open spaces. I was lucky to call this amazing country home for 5 months as a volunteer with WWF Mongolia. While working with the WWF in the Hoft field office near the Russian and Chinese borders, I went on field trips across the western region. It's mostly arid with snow-capped mountains, but there are also springs and great lakes teeming with birdlife and fish that create a dynamic natural habitat for wildlife. On short excursions, we would lay camera traps in the mountains to look for ibex. We would head back to the sites to collect the photographic footage, often with pleasant surprises. We traveled onto the steppe near the dune belt to explore the drier regions of Mongolia in search of saiga antelope and white-tailed gazelle. These types of areas are particularly interesting, as they are the first to be affected by climate change and noticeable desertification, and they can tell us a lot about future battles we face regarding global warming. We also drove up into the mountains, such as Jagaland, to observe the wildlife living at higher altitudes. Mongolian drivers need to be skilled to access the roughest of places and navigate through vast swathes of territory where roads are either in terrible condition or non-existent. It was fascinating meeting local people who are at the front lines of the human-wildlife conflict. Mongolia is probably one of the few places left in the world where many humans still live the same, relatively nomadic life they did 200 years ago. This herder shared his perspective on defending his livestock in prime snow leopard and wolf country.
When I go into the pasture, the snow leopard comes and we are friends. Because I lived in the snow leopard territory and the snow leopard also lives in my territory.
I saw Mongolian saiga, one of the most critically endangered antelopes in the world. Witnessing the newly born calves was something to treasure, considering how precarious the species' current status is and their unstable population. The snow leopard, the flagship animal of the WWF program in Mongolia, is without doubt a magnificent creature. The camera traps WWF set in the remotest part of the country caught them in their natural habitat. Of course, monitoring snow leopards is difficult and even with modern technology requires a lot of patience and luck. One of the biggest joys was working with WWF's network of eco-clubs. We traveled for hours on end to remote camps in western and eastern Mongolia to learn about nature conservation, living responsibly, and celebrating Mongolian culture. The excitement these youngsters have for their surroundings and the perspectives of their unique upbringing are truly fascinating to observe. And of course, kids being kids, there was always plenty of time for fun. As a communications officer, I wrote articles in English, made comics, took tons of pictures and made short videos to show what WWF is doing in Mongolia. It was a great opportunity to produce material creatively in a region that even today is still fairly unknown. And it seemed we were always breaking new ground, whether it was filming unusual sequences with a drone or hashing out a fantasy comic book for children. But more than the unbelievable things I saw or did, it was simply the everyday opportunity of waking up in an incredibly unusual country. It was meeting interesting people who had stopped by in Hoft, working with my colleagues even though we could barely understand each other, tasting strange food, sleeping in a ger as a matter of habit, and drinking lots of tsutsetse that stick with me. This is what I take from my volunteership in Mongolia, and the experience I had will stay with me for a lifetime.